So we Americans, we love movies. We export them all over the world, so it's no secret that in America we do movies really, really well. More than 2/3 of the United States and Canadian population goes to see the movies at least once a year. Not only can we see them in the theaters, also we can see them in streaming. Or if you're old school like me, I still happen to have a DVD library. When there's something I really, really love and I want to be sure that I can see it no matter what, like should Amazon ever go belly up and my Prime is lost to me, I have some DVDs that I will still always have. I love them. That we are also seeing per capita attendance increasing for African Americans, Asians, and other ethnicities. I would venture to guess that the reason we are seeing an increase in attendance with ethnic minorities is that finally we are starting to see an increase in representation in the films that are being made for ethnic minorities, starring ethnic minorities, written by ethnic minorities. So you've got films like Crazy Rich Asians, huge, huge hit. You've got Black Panther, unheard of 50 years ago. So we are starting to see better representation in the movies themselves, which I think is then driving attendance into the movie theaters. And studio heads are starting to notice. Also females, same thing goes for females. An interesting thing that comes up as we go through the semester is that when Hollywood first started, say back in the 1900s to 1920s, when films were silent, they weren't particularly profitable. So in this time, Hollywood was very open to having women write and direct films. Tons of women are writing and producing in the 1920s. When films have sound, when we introduce talking into movies, movies become profitable. And it is at that point that women are pushed out of the way of filmmaking and the men sort of take over. And they monopolize filmmaking until just the last maybe 10, 15 years when women started to push into the industry. It's still woefully behind, but there is progress being made. All right, so what I want you to do as you go through here is understand that film is a communal experience. One of the reasons we love to go to the movies is that there is a particular energy that happens when you are seeing a movie with a crowd of people as opposed to seeing it by yourself. So here's two examples. I kind of love the genre horror films, not slasher, stabby saw movies, cutting people open things, but ghosts. Things that have to do with ghosts and hauntings and things. I went to go see Crimson Peak a couple of years ago, and it's one of those rare occasions when you walk into the theater, big theater over at Silverado, when it was called Silverado. I am the only person in the entire theater. It's a 2 o'clock matinee on a Tuesday. No one else literally is there. So I've got this entire theater to myself. I got cold. I even left my popcorn and soda and went outside to get my sweater out of the car because I knew no one else was in the theater, and so my stuff was safe. I enjoyed Crimson Peak. I did. I mean, it's not the greatest movie ever made, but I enjoyed it. It's a good horror movie. Had some pretty costumes. But when I went to see Get Out, completely different experience. Every seat was filled. And not only was every seat filled, it was an ethnically diverse audience. Okay, bear with me, okay? Hear me on this. White people can be really boring when we go see movies. We are really, really quiet. We're this way in church too, right? So in an ethnically diverse theater full of people, we had all sorts of responses back to the screen as things got scary. People would be like, no, don't go there, don't talk to them, don't drink that tea, whatever. I mean, it was loud, it was participatory, and the energy, you could hear the breath of everyone in the movie theater as things started to go awry for our hero. It makes the movie, I think, more fun when you have a collection of people around you, even if you don't know them, you still share energy with each other, which is, you know, a lot of fun. It makes seeing a movie in a theater as opposed to in your living room a special experience. So in movie making, you can have a couple of different ideas. One is the idea of idealization, the idea that, aha, that person has the life I want, the wardrobe I want, the spouse I want, the income I want, the car I want, whatever it is. So you might love The Devil Wears Prada because you love Anne Hathaway's wardrobe in that. You're like, oh, that's ideal. I wish I had that so much. So there's idealization. That's one of the things that happens in movie making. Then there's also identification. And in identification, you have people who see a character and go, ah, yeah, I get that. Bad Moms is one of those, where I think moms all over who have frustrations about being parents, who have frustrations about their overbearing mothers and their messy children, they watch Bad Moms and they're like, yeah, I get that. So in scripts, you'll have identification or idealization. You can also have complex films. Complex films might include things like 2001: A Space Odyssey, which is kind of a puzzle. Space Odyssey is like a knot in a way that you have to untangle, and you have to have the patience to untangle it. I confess I don't. I confess I don't find that film particularly enjoyable. However, I really appreciate it for what it did in the time that it was released in around 1970, for bringing complex issues of technology to the screen for the American audience to have to kind of unravel a little bit. Then you can have complex films like Do the Right Thing, where you bring race issues, ethnicity issues, issues of poverty, social and identity politics. You bring those to the screen in a way that the mainstream audience has access to. It's complex, much more complex than, say, a Jackass movie, but it makes people come to the table and have some conversation. So you can have complex films. You can also have, super simple films, like the Jackass movies. There's fun, they're just there for fluff. They're like cotton candy as opposed to, an entree that's got a lot of nutrition to it. So how do we move beyond just, I liked the movie or I didn't like the movie? How do we intelligently analyze and discuss a film? So we're going to start with the idea of understanding the form and the style of the movie, and then we're going to understand the text and the context of the movie. So form is the large shape of the film. It's the script, it's the look of the film, it's the camera work, it's the sound, it's the editing. It's basically the shape, it's the skeleton of the movie. The form is the skeleton of the movie. Style is the specific choices that are made on that skeleton. So I guess we could say if form is the skeleton of the movie, it's the script, then you could say style is the clothing that you put on that body. So genre can help us with that. Genre can help us sort out what style we think a film is. And we're going to talk more about genre in a couple of weeks. So text and context. Don't separate the film from the world around it. What is the society? What is the political climate? What is the creator's own experience? What is the body of the creator's work? Spike Lee is an important example of this, I think. When you look at Spike Lee's work and you see the context and the message and everything that he's bringing to the table when he creates a film, he brings a lot with him to the table. You can't disregard what he brings to the table when you're watching his movie. You can't just ignore the history and the context and the politics of the world that he's making the movie in. So an example of a film that you guys won't know, but I'm going to throw it out there because I want you to know about it, is the original film of MASH. Now, MASH was released towards the end of the Vietnam War. Vietnam is a really unpopular, controversial war, as you may know from your history classes. Because MASH was released, it was about the Vietnam War. but they set it in the Korean War, which was really smart because that gave everyone a little bit of distance. If you're tender about the Vietnam War, you can watch something about the Korean War and the message comes through without your defenses going up. But you cannot take away the fact that Vietnam is happening while this movie is being made. There's a lot of political and social upheaval. And then you've got the style of the director, Robert Altman. I'd love for you to look into him a little bit. He is known for being sort of free with his work. There's a lot of improvised dialogue. They have basically the frame of the story, that skeleton that we talked about, but he gives his actors, once they kind of really know their characters and they know the main story and where the story is going and they know they need to get there, he gives his actors the freedom to create dialogue within the scenes as long as those actors are driving the story to where they know it needs to go. Altman is known for his actors talking over each other. It's one of the things, in fact, that makes it hard for me to watch Altman because his characters are constantly interrupting and talking on top of each other, and it's hard to sometimes follow. You have to bring your brain. Really, you can't like check out and be doing a jigsaw puzzle on your iPad while an Altman film is happening. You've got to stay tuned in. Altman was a World War II veteran, so he also brought his own experiences and thoughts and opinions and reflections on war to this movie that was set in the Korean War, but filmed during the time of the Vietnam War. So that's how context kind of works when you're looking at a film. So chapter 1, we're going to talk about how movies are magic. When movies first started, just imagine, if you will, you're sitting in a screen. You've never seen anything like this. It's hard for us to get our minds around it because we're surrounded by screens all the time. But you're sitting in a room, the lights go out, and then all of a sudden the image of a train shines, and the image of the train is coming towards you, and it even looks like the train is going to come out of the screen and hit you. There's a great urban legend about the Lumiere brothers film made in the teens, really, in France. And the Lumiere brothers are really cool because they're the first ones to realize you can film instead of straight on. They are the first ones to realize you can put the camera at an angle. So they put the camera at an angle to the front of the train in the train station. The train comes this way. The urban legend is that the audience was so frightened they thought the train was really real and going to come out of the screen towards them, and so they all got up and ran screaming out of the theater. I don't know if that's true or not, but it's a really fun story. So movies are communal. They're magic. To that early crowd of moviegoers, they are nothing less than absolute magic. It's a communal experience, and film is a cultural and financial phenomenon. Film actually makes a difference in the economy as well as in the zeitgeist of the country. Films are both entertainment and art. Some are more entertainment, some are more art, but they can be appreciated from both perspectives. Sometimes you go to a movie simply because you just want to be entertained, and then sometimes you really want to be challenged. Either way, you can identify, you can idealize, and you can enjoy a film. And then we can analyze a film by looking at its form. In other words, what is the skeleton of the film? What is the script of the film? And we can look at its context to see what they clothe the film with, what it's going to be as a story. So for your first film, you're going to watch Sherlock Jr. It's a Buster Keaton masterpiece, about 45 minutes long, in which a film projectionist falls asleep, has a dream, solves a crime, saves the day. A fun thing about Sherlock Jr., keep in mind all of the stunts are practical. All of the editing is practical. There's no computers, there's no special effects at this time. So when you see Buster Keaton jump through a window and land fully clothed in a completely different outfit, understand that that really actually happened. They rehearsed that stunt until it was perfect, and then they filmed it. Know that when he does the pool tricks with the cue and the ball. Those are real pool tricks filmed in real time. He practiced those for months to be ready to do those pool tricks. So it's a lot of fun to watch Sherlock Jr. It's going to be in black and white. It is a silent film, not a talkie. You will see intertitles. Your textbook talks about this. Intertitles are those cards that come up and maybe say something like 5 minutes later or Boston, Massachusetts. These are cards that give you either dialogue or time and place. So you'll have intertitles. In their original showings, silent films did have live music played. It might be on a piano, it might be on an organ. So when they've uploaded this film, the editors have included a soundtrack, a piano soundtrack that sounds much like what might have been played by a pianist in the theater at the time. The acting style is unique in a silent movie. So here's why. When they first started making silent movies, they came at it from a theatrical perspective. Both the directors and the actors had only ever been working in live theater. If you've been to see a play, you know that usually you sit in the audience and you look straight at the stage. The stage is a box, right? And so they treated the camera as though it was just an audience member in the center of the audience with a camera pointed straight at the stage. Everything is just straight on. The actors, because they've been used to emoting in a large room in which there are no close-ups and there are no microphones, and so every facial expression, every gesture has to be larger than it would normally be so that the people up in the back of the balcony can see them and hear them. So they brought that acting style onto camera. So it looks a bit exaggerated from what we're used to because they've brought theatrical acting onto camera. Now actors know that there's a difference between theatrical live acting and camera acting, but at that time they didn't know that. So the acting style is going to look a little wonky and a little old-fashioned to you, but that's okay. That's why we're watching it, so you can see where film started from where it is now. So everything that you need to know here is on D2L. It's in the content as well as in the assignment link. Everything you're going to turn in is going to be there, and remember there's a discussion over in the collaboration drop-down menu. And thanks. I will see you for lesson 2